Hello, Splunkers. My name is Ami, and I am your Global Content Marketing Manager. I have the pleasure of representing your Women Plus ERG for the continuation of this Seat at the Table Talk series. This series originated with members of our Women Plus ERG exploring ways that we could really create and feel confident about taking space, with a happy result being that our leaders are able to speak directly to us and answer our questions and share advice as if we were all sitting at the same table. Splunk's Women Plus ERG understands how challenging it can be to feel like we have that proverbial seat at the table. So this open forum encourages all of us to dive into the topics as chosen by you, Splunkers, in our quarterly event survey. In today's discussion, we dive into what seems to be top of mind for everyone right now, and that's leaning into career growth. We're so excited to have this conversation as I'm joined by two of our leaders who have deep insight into this topic. So without further ado, let me please introduce you to Elaine Mason and Marvin Green. Thank you both for joining us at this Seat at the Table talk. Elaine, I would love to briefly start with some of your million data points and hear you share what brought you to where you are here at Splunk today.
My million data points are probably quite a distraction, so I'll give you kind of the highlights, and then I can give a couple pieces of trivia. So first of all, I'm honored to be part of this conversation. I'm honored to be sitting on a panel with Marvin and yourself, Ami. This is exactly the conversation I want to spend my time in. I'm the Chief Talent Officer at Splunk. And I've been at the company roughly 18 months, which for some of us sounds like I'm a dinosaur at Splunk, and some of us realize it's still relatively new. I am someone that came in during COVID, which is always a bit of a challenge. Prior to Splunk, I actually worked in a variety of talent and HR business roles across Cisco, which is a much larger tech company. And before that, I was at American Express. And way back in the dark ages, I'm a career shifter. So I actually used to run technology for an entertainment company. I've kind of been around a number of different career blocks. Something core to me, this is part of my MDP, is that I have a kind of core value, which is around level of playing field. And it's been something that's been in my career since my first internship out of my undergraduate, and continues to go with all the time. Other interesting points from my MDP. One, I'm a San Jose native, but born and bred New Yorker, and it will take you about a hot minute to realize not born and bred San Jose. Great place to live, love to visit, but would rather be sitting in the torrential rains of New York City right now. And other than that, it's just me, my partner, our dog, and spending weekends hiking in all the crazy hills and mountains that exist where I am. So Ami, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here, Elaine. Next, I'd love to highlight Marvin, who, oh gosh, many of you will already know from his compelling million data points video, the blogs, his podcast, his .conf presentations. The list of your credentials is long indeed, sir. And personally, one of the things that always stands out to me is how skillfully you balance advocacy and gratitude. Our Women Plus ERG is thrilled to have you share your insights today, especially after this morning's Beams ERG general meeting, where you discussed some of the successes within the career growth and advancement work stream that you lead here at Splunk. So please, if you'd like to share a little bit about your Splunk journey and what brought you to where you are here today.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me. It's always good to just talk about these topics and how we can move forward. One of my big career values, or just personal values, about growth. How do we keep growing and moving forward? In terms of a quick background, I was born and raised in Jamaica. You may wonder, why do I not sound like I have an accent? There's a little bit there if you listen closely, but I spent, times figuring out how to improve that along the way and make sure that, I'm able to speak and people can actually hear me, understand, and so on. So that's after 6 months of listening or working on reading through the American English Dictionary. A little bit about background in terms of million data point. I did track and field in Jamaica. Didn't make it to the Olympic team, but there's some fast runners there, as you all know. Another personal one I'll pull in is that my wife and I are really passionate about marriages and helping couples improve the quality of their relationships and marriages. And we facilitate a preparing for marriage class every now and then. So we're passionate about that. Let's see, anything I haven't shared yet. I'll move over into the career piece at Splunk. What brought me to Splunk? I saw Splunk as a really small company. Back when I joined, it was about 3,200 or 3,500 people. Now we're close to 8,000. And it was the opportunity for me to take all my career experience that I've learned at big companies that have 300,000 employees and really apply that at Splunk to help us grow and scale our operations, products and things like that. So loving it here, coming up on 5 years in September. So it's really exciting and I'm still having a ton of fun. I feel like it's not even halftime yet. So hope to be here when we get to, I don't know, 100,000 people plus. So I'm really loving it and enjoying it here at Splunk.
Oh, thanks so much for sharing, Marvin. And for those of you who may not be familiar with my story, I'm passionate about career pathing here at Splunk because I've successfully navigated it. I joined in Splunk in 2019 as a contract position, and since then have been promoted 4 times with continued development conversations still happening with my new leader. I find that when we're open to listening and learning from each other, we can truly elevate our understanding of not only how to fit into the bigger picture, but also how to flourish. So let's dive into these discussions because I know everybody who's watching is looking forward to learning how we can be empowered to grow our own careers through the global challenges that the world's facing right now. So to start, let's lay the foundation of understanding about what career mobility really means to both of you.
I can start, and then Marvin, we can keep swapping if it helps. So for me, career mobility is about moving from experience to experience, industry to industry, and gaining learning every time. I don't define career mobility as upward only. And the reason why I state that is it really feeds into an old paradigm where careers are always about, promotion, where I actually think about really careers are about like contributing, learning, and purpose. The other reason why I often think about mobility as something that's not quite driven on an upward track is because there's a math problem with upward mobility. Most organizations are shaped like a pyramid, which means options upward limit over time, which means everyone will not get to the high level or the single role they want, the single title they want. And if that's what's motivating you, you could drive your career to get there, but you may miss out on great learning opportunities, great experiential opportunities, other ways to kind of open your aperture. So for me, mobility is all about what it says. It's movement, it's change, and it's learning.
Oh, so well said. Movement, change, learning. I love that. Marvin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, those are all good points, Elaine. I think I look at it from the angle of the ability to move, like Elaine said, but also more of just the option to see options, right? And different opportunities in front of you. So if you don't see that, you're going to think that they don't exist. So you have to have the visibility of what options exist out there, whether it's in your own company or somewhere else, to then be able to have that vision and then move forward to go and grab it. So for me, it starts with the vision of what's available to then move into that. And then in some cases, you can create your own. You can think of a business you want to start, and that's mobility as well, whether you want to jump into that new venture of your life. So it starts with vision for me to envision what's available, what you can grab, or create your own, and then move forward to go get it.
Oh, I love that vision. And you're so right. I think about that cliche conversation that people used to ask in interviews. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I think that especially over the last 3 years and the transformational changes that we've seen on a global scale, it's unrealistic to ask that question anymore. But rather, I think that the focus is now, what strengths do you have that you would like to see leveraged? And then let's see where we can fit that into the bigger picture. I think that says a lot more about where do you want to be in 5 years, because if you ask a cliche question, you're going to get the cliche answer of, well, the only place to go is up, when really, we know that the playing field is so much broader to explore. So well phrased, both of you. Thank you for that level playing field. So as we go into career conversations, a lot of the feedback that people provided in our quarterly surveys was saying how intimidating that career development conversations can actually be. There is uncertainty over career paths that are available. That feeling of imposter syndrome. Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I deserving for the next opportunity? And really, especially with the struggle of working from home right now, that fear of that working out of the work-life balance. That will I have to give up my personal in order to advance at work? So what's some of the thoughts and feedback that you have around these concerns that people share?
I think they're valid for sure. I've certainly experienced those over the years. I'll start with the first one you mentioned in terms of uncertainty about career path. And I thought about it this morning as I'm thinking about this session. It's like, how do you frame that? How do you essentially position yourself to thrive in sort of that uncertainty? And what comes to mind is we actually live and go through uncertainty every day. What I mean by that is, do we know what's going to happen tomorrow? Maybe not. We may have plans, but this week we came into the week thinking, okay, we're going to have a normal routine. We get a text message from daycare that daycare is going to be closed because the teacher's tested positive, right? I couldn't control that Sunday night. So we live in uncertainty every day about the future and we don't know what's there. So when we take that shift and apply it to career uncertainty, it's better for us to understand that we've been there before and we can't really predict the future. So taking the lessons that we've learned of being just living in uncertain times all the time or uncertainty every day, really that's what helps me to really take away that uncertainty factor in my career journey. I don't feel like it's been years where I haven't felt like, oh, things are uncertain, I'm not sure what's going to happen next. And it's because it's like, you know what, you've been there before. And you know, tomorrow is going to bring what tomorrow is going to bring. So that's how I approach the uncertainty factor. Just eliminate it, because none of us can predict what's going to happen tomorrow, whether at home or in our careers. So that's how I manage that piece. And then the imposter syndrome, that's a hard one. I think in terms of building on what I said before, thinking about where you were 10 years ago, if you can pause for a moment, have that quick moment of reflection. The year would be what, 2012? What was happening in 2012? It's September coming up in a couple of months. I was preparing to get married in September 2012. That's where I was 20 years ago. I didn't envision me being here at Splunk, certainly not at Splunk, or in the Bay Area for that matter. I was on the East Coast. And so when you think of imposter syndrome, what got you to the position where you are right now? Leverage that, because that experience is what you're going to build from. And that's the rock you're standing on to move forward to the next part in your career. So think about, you know, whether you're at Splunk or you're somewhere else, where you are now, you've had a journey to get there and you can leverage that to take the next step. So that's how I give my self-talk. It's like, look, I'm here. I've made it this far with all the love and support from a bunch of people in my career. I can't begin to name them. And those people are still around, and there's going to be more people along the way to come and help me as I go. So that's how I tackle that imposter syndrome that, you know, want to rear its head every now and then. It's like, look, believe, have faith that, you know, God brought me here this far and, you know, I can keep going. So that's how I tackle that piece. And then the third piece you said about work-life balance. My wife and I talk about this a lot. And we go through this conversation. I think she had a mentor that shared this with her at one point, is that we're not going to get all straight A's in every areas of our lives, in all the areas of our lives, right? There's going to be a time where career gets an A, right? And then maybe health, sometimes, even though we shouldn't put that off, may get to like get a B or maybe a C in some cases when you're really pushing your career. And then family and friends, where do those fit in? And I think if we plan and be diligent to say, you know what, in this phase of my life right now, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to focus on these two things or three. And you give those the A's, and then be okay and be comfortable with B or C in something else. And I think having that mindset in terms of work-life balance will help, because right now we have a 5-year-old at home. It's more like 5-year-old family gets the A and then career is more like a B somewhere there, but you're giving your best, just to be honest and completely transparent. And hopefully as he gets older, we can then, like, you know, dump everything and maybe career gets an A and he can be off in college and we're like, see ya. And now we can focus on other things. But we just have to be real and understand that life comes in phases. And so understand where we want to set our focus and priorities, and know that they're going to shift over time. It's not going to be career 100%. Or if you want that, go for it. It can be that for you. So just that's how I would tackle those.
So funny, Marvin, a couple of things you said really resonate with the ways I've been looking at things. The imposter syndrome one is particularly interesting, where I used to have a constant fear of feeling like an imposter. It was directly related to what I used to have, which was, I would say, is my affliction toward perfection. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I no longer am afflicted by it, but I recognize once a perfectionist, always a perfectionist. But with imposter syndrome, there's direct correlation there. And the way I let go of it was, I first recognized there are always going to be moments in time where I can't prevent imposter syndrome. And in fact, if I'm taking on roles or taking risks that are pushing boundaries, it is very likely I'm going to feel like an imposter because I haven't done it before. It is new. It is something different. So I look at imposter syndrome as a motivator and an engine for learning, as opposed to something I'm trying to avoid, which is a very different, it's a mindset shift. And at first it felt very uncomfortable. And then I started really getting into it, because what I did find was when I felt like I was an imposter and then got over it, I learned something. And when I felt like an imposter and found out, oh no, you were an imposter and I failed, I learned something. So it helped me kind of pivot away from trying to avoid. The second one on work life, I think you're absolutely correct. There are stages of life. There are things that what's important to you changes over time. One thing I'd say that we can do for ourselves, though, which is kind of something I took a while for me to actually get really comfortable with, is the responsibility as a professional to get clear on our values and how we want them to show up at work. That means you get clear on what your boundaries are and get clear on what trade-offs you're willing to make for the opportunities of work. Marvin, you just demonstrated it perfectly with your life and grades. Right now, I'm going to get an A in family. That's a trade-off you're making, that it may mean you get a B in careers, but you're not a victim of something. You're making a conscious choice. So I think work-life balance, we know that term is kind of becoming retired, as I'm sitting in my house, you're all sitting in your houses. When am I in life and when am I in work? But there is something there about really getting just clear on what is motivating you now. What are you going to trade off for now? And being explicit about it actually helps your team, helps your leader, helps people, if you are a leader subordinate to you, to kind of at least understand what you're putting in play. And that makes people then be able to support what you want. So Marvin, if you're saying, from 5 to 8 at night, those hours are off limits, those are family time, and you're explicit about it, the people you work with can be more supportive of that. And they can at least be cognitive of the fact when they are leaning in on that time, that you're making a choice to support them when otherwise you would have supported your family. And then on career paths, I think paths, again, are something that we need to slowly let go of, given the advent of the gig economy, given the fact that most careers that I've ever interviewed any candidate on were non-linear and non-directive. Paths are really hard to follow. What I tend to look for, and it goes back to what Marvin said earlier, is your career compass. What is the thing you want to be known for? What is the thing that fuels your soul? And what is the thing that you're not only good at, but get energy from? And that is your strength. And the compass should guide more of that, please. More of in my values, more of in my strength, more of in my purpose. That's the stuff that guides the career, versus something that some HR person prescribed on a document 5 years ago that's probably expired since their pen was put down.
And I love that symbolism behind the compass too, because your values are your North Star. So that compass is always going to drive you in that right direction, whether it's over the different barricades or through the troughs, but it'll get you past the discomfort to where you want to be. That's beautiful. Thank you both. When I think of imposter syndrome, I think of the trust that I have in my teachers, the mentors that I've had, that the people who have gone out of their way to educate me on how to do things. By me having imposter syndrome, it's showing that I don't trust the education that I was provided. And I know that if I have the best mentors in the world, I'm set up to be the best version of myself as well. So that's the pep talk that I have on my end too, speaking of those pep talks. But let's go into advice, because this has been so great so far with that internal reflection. Now let's take that internal ideas that we've figured out best suits our needs and talk about how to broach these with our managers. What does career conversations look like with our leaders? How should we have them? And do we need to have these conversations with our direct manager? Does career pathing require approval?
So it's a great question, Ami, and it is not consistent across Splunk. I think this is part of our journey as an organization, but I'll start with the basics on career. And this is at least in my philosophy for some time. Nobody you work with cares about your career more than you, period, full stop. So you can wait for your manager to call on you to have a conversation on your career. You can wait for a HR schedule to say, now's your development conversation, or you can get really clear on how I want to grow my career and have a conversation with your manager and set that as something that's part of your agenda and something that you drive forward. Now, a piece of advice to do that. Not all managers are ready for that. So give them a heads up in advance so they can actually do their job well and support you. If you blindside your leader going, I'd like to have a career conversation with you now, and I want you to do this for me now, chances are they're going to mess up because they're human too. So give them some heads up, be clear on the objective of the conversation and make sure that objective is known in advance, and prepare, be clear on the questions you want to ask if you're looking for advice, so you get the support that you need. And then the third thing, and this is one that is probably one that doesn't always occur to us when we're thinking about our careers, you've got to recognize the context in which you're sitting in the organization in which you're in. Like, the time to ask for promotion isn't when you're in the middle of a hiring freeze. The time to ask for a raise isn't in the middle of when you're in an operating budget reduction, because even if your people leader is absolutely fabulous, they may not have the levers to pull on your behalf. So the career conversation should be a lot more about, I'm thinking about doing this in my career. Any advice on how to get there? What do you see in me, or things that I could be doing differently or amplifying or doing more of to get to where I want to go? So that is the way you can actually help your manager be supportive of you, and at the same point, help yourself drive your own career. And again, you'll see I use a lot of probably driving scenarios. You got your compass now. Now you know where you want to go. Now you're going to talk to the person that's at the gas station to help you get directions. It is absolutely how you can drive your own career.
I love that, Elaine. And something you said from the last point around sharing and with your team, like your preferences in terms of that 5 to 8 p.m. I think we don't do that enough. Especially I see it with various people in the organization here at Splunk. And it's one of the things I tell my team in terms of preferences. And actually, when someone new joins my team, we have that conversation around preferences, work style. Are you a morning person? Should I message you at 9 or 8, or should I wait till 10 after a couple of cups of coffee? All of those things we have to make sure we have in discussions with our team and our managers. So I just wanted to go back to that. I think that's important that we.
Hey, Marvin, just a quick tip on that one, because you're so on the same page. I actually wrote up a user guide that I started using literally 14 years ago now, that when someone starts working with me, I give them my user guide, and it isn't permission for being a bad person. It is actually giving them a sense of, you want a good decision out of me, do not talk with me after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm just not good then. And it's funny, I used it originally because I had leader rotation, that I was getting a new leader every 6 months, and I wanted to accelerate my trust and relationships with them. But it's turned out to be a great way to kind of set my priorities and guardrails. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but it just.
No, that's good. I'm going to actually borrow that. I don't have one, and I've been in products for a while. I'm like, why don't I have a user guide to me? So I think it'd be awesome for my wife actually too, because I have some weird quirks. So anyway. I think in terms of that, I'm going to actually borrow that for sure, Elaine. But to answer the question in terms of career development, back in the day, I would say up until last year, was doing a 6-month career discussion with my managers. I've done that throughout my entire career. And then recently, I think since November, I've done more quarterly conversations. And now I have a new manager, Saurabh. He's actually pushing our team and elevating us to actually drive more frequent discussions. So now our team actually have a monthly career discussion. Now, to some of you may think, oh my gosh, we're going to have a career discussion every single month. And if you think about it, we've had them now for a couple months. If you think about it, if you wait 6 months to have that discussion of, let's say, hey, I'm thinking about exploring leadership opportunity in product or whatever it is. In 6 months later time, you could actually have different feelings, thoughts, or maybe change the directions. That's going to be too long. And then quarterly, when we used to do that quarterly, that's also a touch point where it's 3 months later, you're talking about it again. You may pick up on where you left off with your team. And what we find with monthly is now we could actually create action plans. And because we're meeting monthly, we would have a discussion about, okay, what did you do in June to get you to the development plans that you have and the goals you set for yourself. And it's also an accountability play as well, because come in July, if I'm going to have that discussion, I need to prep to make sure I'm doing things and so on. And so what I find myself doing now is being more diligent and having more intent around my plans and growth and what I'm going to do with my own career growth and then also with my team. And then I do my weekly checkpoints with myself Friday. So Friday, I have some time where I go, what have I done to get to the goal and so forth. So I would encourage or challenge you to try that. I mean, if you never really had a career discussion or you do it 1 year with your manager, that's going to be a hard jump to go from 1 year to monthly, but try to get to that point. And it's been really valuable since we've tried that. So that's what I would say about career discussions, and being clear about what you want. Your career development is about what are your goals, what do you want to get to, where you want to go, and having that conversation with your manager or leader to help provide that guidance. So
Oh, I love that. I recently had a talk with my manager not that long ago where I said, the hard part in life is figuring out what you want. The easy part is going out and getting it. And that same sort of path, right? Once you figure out that goal, you can break it down into achievable chunks to work your way towards achieving that goal. So I love what you said, Marvin, about, yeah,
yeah, I have a comment on that. So I've had I've mentored a few folks where they don't have that, and that's more common than not, where people go, I just like what I do, I'm not sure what the next step is. And in those situations, I would encourage you to think about, what is it about what you do that you enjoy, and then break it down into skills or traits and so on. So for some people, they may say, I just like to be a program manager or whatever it is. And then you break that down into, well, what are the skills needed? And it could just be that, within that framework of a program manager, I'm going to use that for example, or product manager, whatever it is, you could then grow and actually have opportunities to lead larger programs, for example, or take that skill and then completely get out of, the IT or tech or whatever world, and take program management and apply that to maybe say legal or marketing or whatever it is. It's the same skill set, but now you're exploring different areas in the organization. So if you get to that point where you're not sure about the next step, think about what is it that you like about what you do, and then break that down into skills, and then use that to see where can those skills be applied next.
and I love that feedback that you said at the end of the week, block some time for reflection. What did I accomplish this week? What am I proud of this week? What drove my own personal success this week? So that you could take those and, again, follow your compass, follow that North Star, and guide yourself to where you want to have these conversations with our leaders too. Great advice. So as we continue to look at career development, from a leader perspective, because you both are strong advocates for career development, both internally here at Splunk as well as externally within our networks, do you find that you provide the same advice consistently to people, regardless of whether they're a contract worker or early in career talent, or is there more of an emphasis on development for senior roles?
I can kind of start on that one, but I think Marvin, I'm sure we can probably go back and forth a bit. So I think there are some, first from a level in the organization, it sometimes does depend. But let's start with, you had asked about contract work versus not. And one thing, at least as an organization, we do have to be conscious of the fact is that we want to avoid co-employment. So we're not always going to give the exact same advice to somebody who's on contract with us. And also because, quite frankly, they may be looking for something different. If there's someone that wants to work gig and doesn't want to work full time, giving them advice on how to land a full-time gig is probably not meaningful to them. So for employees and for like all Splunkers, there's kind of baseline career development advice I could typically give. Like, we can ultimately give someone the idea of, what are your strengths? Get clear on your strengths, get clear on your values. And that is, by the way, something, whether someone is individual contributor at a, first level entry, all the way up to if they're a senior vice president. And there have been people that are at VP and senior vice president level that can be great at what they do, but don't like what they do. So I think to start, like, career advice for employees, I would definitely go down the road of giving kind of there are some general guidance that I would give. And then specifically, if you're talking about how the organization treats roles differently, progression in careers slows over height. The higher up you go in an organization, the availability of options, the availability of roles, if you're trying to go up, will get narrower. So you have to be conscious of the fact that if you're sitting in an individual contributor role as an entry-level person, you will have more promotion velocity than somebody who's sitting at a director level. And similarly, if you're somebody that's sitting at and if your expectations are as if you'd have the same promotion velocity, you're probably going to be mistaken. So I think it really depends a little bit on what the advice is that people are looking for and where they are in their career. But I never want to follow the assumption that just because someone's at a senior level, they are not looking for some of the basics, especially people that may have been in career for a long period of time and they were historically part of prescribed career paths that no longer exist.
Those are great. I think the only thing I would add to that is, like you said, it has to be prescribed to the person. So I approach it from the perspective of the individual who I'm speaking with or working with. and base it off of their goals or plans and so on. So it's not the same advice for everyone. There are a couple of things that I would encourage and I share for everyone though, is in terms of what you do and the impact you have to maintain I call it wins journal, or career journal. There's other, names for it, but what you did, the impact it had, who gave you reviews, because we're in a review-centric 5-star world now. Write down who commented, who gave you reviews, take a screenshot of that, and then map that to your career framework in terms of level of performance. If you're doing that, then that's a huge step. The second thing I would say to everyone is in terms of exposure. I look at it, and maybe it's just my product background. If you have an awesome product or awesome whatever it is, if no one knows about it, do you have an awesome product? Well, maybe you can argue that. And so you have to do a little bit of marketing for yourself. You yourself is a product or someone that could provide service or value to the organization. So you have to think of it that way and be intentional about putting yourself out there, being involved in the Womxn ERG or the other ERGs out there. And that is going to give you the exposure. You also want to make sure you're getting exposure, not just to your manager or your peers, but how do you kind of get in the way and get up to that second level above your manager and so on. So those will be the two things. You have to do your work, do it well, perform, track those, and have a document for it. And then, get yourself out there. There's tons of opportunities at Splunk to do that. The ERG is perfectly primed for that. So those will be my two things that I say to everyone, but it's based on, the individual's goals and what they want to accomplish.
You know what? I really want to double down on that. So you were talking about our ERGs and the strength of network that people can find within our ERGs here at Splunk. We know that when it comes to career growth and development, that sometimes there is an additional struggle for underrepresented groups, for people who don't necessarily have that awareness of opportunities that are available for them, or awareness of how to advocate for themselves when they look or feel different than those around them. We've seen some systematic barriers for advancement at other organizations as well. So what advice do both of you have for overcoming these challenges, and how can we ensure that we can advocate for ourselves when we feel like nobody else is?
It's a good one. In terms of, let's start with the ERG. I think there's strength in numbers. I'd start there. Is all of our ERGs, I think we have 9 of them. We have the same mission, right? Is to elevate underrepresented employees here at Splunk with career growth and different opportunities. There's an unlimited amount of opportunities. And I'm not using that word loosely, because literally somebody can approach me now and say, hey, Marvin, I have a cool idea for the career growth and advancement work group at Beams. It's not something we had on our radar for the year, and we could then go forward and create that event. So we have an unlimited potential to invent something. And if we do the planning properly, we can get exposure to all the way up to Gary if needed, our CEO at Splunk. And so that's what I would tap into, is just that unlimited potential of going out there, inventing something, creating something, and then you leverage the ERG strength in numbers to get it done, because the leadership of each of our all of our ERGs here is there to help you and so on. So don't feel like you're by yourself, and just be active, get out there. There's tons of opportunities. So that's how I'd encourage folks to leverage that and grow their career from that perspective.
So I have a plus like 1,000 on where you are, Marvin. In fact, the ERGs at this organization are really much more impactful than I've seen at larger organizations. They really know how to really market, advise, guide, sponsor, and support leaders and their teams in a way that I haven't seen very other places. I can tell you from a Splunk perspective, I think what you're asking on me is important and top of mind. One thing we've really shifted toward in the last year or so is we're using good data understanding our promotion velocity, our movement, our retention for underrepresented groups and women. And we're investigating where we do see abnormalities. Like, why is that group not having the promotion velocity of others? And it's starting with good data gets us out of myth and folklore about what's happening and gets us right into what's actually experienced here at Splunk. And then I know Marvin shared it earlier, and Ami, you shared it as well, about visibility. visibility both as an individual from marketing and visibility to what options are before you. In the next year, so not currently in place, but we're trying to get launched by the end of this year, is an internal marketplace for Splunkers. And what that would be is actually the opportunity for Splunkers to look at opportunities, both job-based to start, but over time can become project-based or gig-based, that they can actually navigate what is available in the organization. Today, Splunkers either have to go to our outside career platform, or it's a who you know factor, which I am always worried about, because then if you don't know, you don't get what you need. But that internal marketplace is really going to, I think, up-level us as an enterprise on making sure that people have the career mobility they're looking for. So if you take the combination of what Marvin was saying of know your brand and know how to get your brand seen, combined with knowing what you want to do and knowing what your compass needs to be and what you're really good at and what you get strengths from, then you can look at a marketplace and go, match game, I found myself, now I can actually proceed with it. It starts getting us all the pieces of the puzzle that we need to be able to really guide our own careers here.
You're doing a great job hosting this, and I know we have a team of folks who are involved in this as well, but this is a great opportunity that we have here, and you're leveraging that, and that's giving you the exposure. So this is, you're living it, doing it right now, which is awesome. So kudos to that. And similar for me, I met Elaine from an event last year where we were working on around sponsorship, and now we talk all the time, and if we didn't step up and do that, it's not something or add that exposure to Elaine, which is awesome. I'm a big fan.
I'm a big fan of both of you too. And that really talks to the strength of our ERG, that strength of our global communities. We lift each other up, we amplify each other, we put each other in places where we see success from a peer-to-peer standpoint so that we can help each other grow and develop. I do want to circle back on what something Elaine said about using that good data to move us forward, because of course at Splunk, we are a data company and our mission is to remove the barriers between data and action so that everyone can thrive in the data age. And that's the inclusiveness that I like to embrace. So what does this mean to you both in terms of career growth and development?
Yeah, so I can definitely start. So I tend to start with data first. And it's funny because I'm kind of wired to go from an empathy perspective, and I've quickly learned working in corporate America to start with data. So yeah, I think as an HR organization, just to put on my people hat for a minute, we've done a lot in the last 12 months to build up our muscle around people analytics and get a sense of what's really happening for our Splunkers, both from what our employee experience team has been doing with the loop that runs thrice yearly to get a pulse of how our employees are doing, and then the planning and action that we take against that. So we don't just say, oh, interesting to hear that you're having challenges with careers, we're not going to do anything. Instead, we go, okay, it's now a priority, we're going to take action on it. And then ultimately, even on our mobility and our movement of our talent, we have a sense of how our Splunkers are doing from a hiring and retention perspective that we've never had before. We have dashboards that our executive leadership team sees on a monthly basis. So for me, I think our mission of removing the barriers between data and action, we're starting to do that. We've gotten a sense of the good data, and now we're actually prioritizing the work that actually helps us move toward action. And I think this year alone for fiscal 23, we have, I think, 3 priorities that are directly linked to the data. So career development and mobility is one of our priorities. That is going to include that internal marketplace, which is directly out of our loop data. We have leader development, which is actually the second one, also out of our loop data, and also out of, quite frankly, when we're hearing about why people attrite out of the company. And then the third one is actually all about how to make sure Splunkers are getting some of the basics. And what we've done, we've actually started and then kind of are trying to evaluate if it's working, is the idea of how do you help Splunkers in the time that they have available gain little bits of insight, give little bits of learning. So we actually have just established with Gary our leadership behaviors as an organization. And now what we're going to do is start breaking them apart and say, okay, if one of our leadership behaviors or Splunker behaviors, to be frank, is curiosity, how do we enable Splunkers to actually develop that skill? So I think, Almi, we're really trying to start with the data, understanding of where we are as an org, and then starting from there to take action and prioritize against it.
That's a good one, Elaine, from more of a org perspective. In terms of personally, how I use data is all the things that I've done in terms of that career journal. I'm going to go back and plug that again, is to capture that impact, quantify it. And if you can't quantify it, you could also add the soft benefits and so on as well. And once you put that now into your wins journal and so on, you would actually be able to essentially stack up well when it comes to career reviews and so on. If you talk about just, okay, I did this or I did that, then you add some data to it, then you sort of elevate yourself in terms of when we get into those conversation of career discussions, talent reviews, and so on. So that's where I draw heavily in terms of data and how it, comes to navigating my career. And I encourage my team to build that into their wins journal as well. So definitely do that. I can share one example, won't use any name, that there was a person who came in and was advocating for someone to be promoted and didn't have the hard metrics. And it was just really tough to see that the numbers weren't there. And because the numbers weren't there, it was hard for the board or the committee to say, yep, we support that. So it's really important that we as individuals take our own career in our hands, like Elaine said, and have that journal documented, and then you can share that with your manager. So now they have something where they can just go copy paste and you're done, right? Instead of them having to think. When we don't do that, now you're leaving it up to your manager. If they have multiple people on the team, how do we expect them to think of all the awesome work that you've done over, I don't know, a year and quantify that for you? It's going to be hard. So we do that ourselves, and then we set our manager up for success, which then impacts our success in the end.
Marvin, what I will tell you that totally, first of all, I love the wins journal. I think if you're stealing my user guide, I'm stealing your wins journal. And by the way, I did a quick glance at our Slack channel. People want copies of both of them so they can actually build their own, just so you know. We have homework after this.
I have a template. I'll send it out.
That's why on my user guide. So we'll do a little swap. But the thing that really hit me on that is advice I almost always give team members that are specifically from a career looking for a promotion is you want to make it that it's a fait accompli is I think the French phrase for it, which it is and I don't speak French, so I'm sure I'm butchering the entire thing there. You want to make it so when your leader does go to whatever promotion meeting, whatever flavor you have in Splunk in your team, that it is a no-brainer, that everyone's like, of course that person, they're not that level already. Of course that person is. And of course we would have expected that. And that combined with when promotions should not be about performance. They should be about scope increase. So you have the combination of this person's scope is at a different level. And oh, by the way, you all know, fait accompli, we expect that person to be there. It makes it very easy for them, that promotion to go through if someone's looking for upward mobility. That also applies though, if someone's looking to make a shift in their org, the more awareness people have and the understanding of what you're capable of doing, people can make adjacencies and see skill set A here does apply on problem set B here. It makes it easier for them to feel comfortable with taking a potential risk on someone who's shifting in role.
This is so great. And I'm looking at the time and I'm regretting the fact that this is only 1 hour. So before we wrap up, I do want to ask something that I consistently ask everybody, because I think this is a key element that reminds us of why we're so lucky being a Splunker. But what excites you both about being at Splunk, and why do you think now is a good time to grow your career here?
Jumping off the chair on this one. So I'm bullish on Splunk, love being here. So when I'll go back to share my journey in terms of when I made a decision to apply and join Splunk, I was coming from organizations that were 100,000 employees, 300,000 employees, huge, large organizations. And a lot of people in the Bay Area see Splunk as a big company, but at 3,000 when I joined, it was really relatively small in comparison to 300,000. And so what I saw in terms of what I could see on the website and so on, and then through the interviews, was just a ton of opportunities in terms of you can create the future. Actually, one of my journals that I have it says invent the future is the name of that notebook. And literally, we've been able to do that with our ERGs. I've been able to do that in terms of my career path and journey, and with the support of tons of people. And Splunk is growing. What we have in terms of roles here, if you take a look at the roles or opportunities available today, those didn't exist last year or the year before. And so it almost feels like there's this infinite potential of what you can do, and the impact you can have. And so I'm having a blast at Splunk and working on the next thing in terms of a sponsorship program. And then also within products, just coming up with some different ideas. I have my eyes set on emotional intelligence, like how can I do that and get a good amount of people behind that and do something impactful at Splunk with that. So yeah, it's literally, we limit ourselves is what I would say if you're at Splunk and feeling like you're stuck. there's so much you can do. And so I'm super excited, super bullish at Splunk, and love it here. So I'm here 5 years and counting.
Marvin, I love that. And it's funny because there is myth and folklore that we're not growing, but in the last year, we've hired over 2,500 people. We had over 500 internal moves, over 1,000 promotions at a 7,500 person company. Let me tell you, those numbers are not normal. Those numbers are about in the company that's in rapid growth. For me, I didn't actually share at the upfront of the conversation, like what my career advice is, but I tend to give people the advice that if they have two options, pick the one that scares you. Because that's the one that's probably going to present the most growth and the most opportunity for you to really grow in your career. So when I think about this organization, we are midway through a transformation. We are in a business transformation, in the time of a work-life transformation, in the time of a leadership team transformation. There's a lot of change there. And when there are changes, there are opportunities. And some of those opportunities may be scary, but if you lean into them, you're probably going to come out the other side, at a minimum, learning a whole bunch. At a maximum, with a whole new other route in your career. So for me, there is no company I know of that is in such a movement and such a degree of change. Puts us in an incredible spot to invent and do new things with ourselves and our roles in our careers.
I think you have a line, Elaine, that Splunk is the biggest startup you've
Yeah.
been at, or something to that effect.
Yeah, Splunk's the biggest startup I've ever worked at. Yeah.
Yeah.
What an amazing conversation, Elaine, Marvin. Thank you again, not just for taking the time to share your thoughts, but also to give your insights, your advice, and your personalized journey of career development as well. From a personal perspective, I've enjoyed the best mentoring of my life here at Splunk across all areas of our business, from true industry leaders and globally recognized innovators. Splunk's known for being successful, and this has always been because of the people we hire, making Splunkers in very high demand. As the world continues to evolve through the data age, every industry has had to accelerate their digital journey, and it's truly the people behind the data, the Splunkers, who guide the world through these transformational changes. It's like the 6 degrees of separation. With 8,000 employees, over 2,000 partners, and 96 of the Fortune 100 customers being our users, we really are all connected somehow. That's what keeps me at Splunk. It's that global mentorship. It's these global connections and opportunities to consistently learn from the best in-class leaders, from the newly discovered talent who are shaping our future. And I find that all of these brilliant minds tend to have at least one thing in common, and that's Splunk. It's easy to find a job right now, but it's exciting to grow your career at Splunk. My name is Ami, and this has been a conversation with Elaine and Marvin, and together we are Splunk. Thank you.